because it's not too easy to get accepted into the community. And I had to do a bit of field work. I was working with a brother in South Carolina, and I don't know if you could share some about that, because it eats into the time, and that sort of just messed up my whole timeline, because it does take time, and you can't dictate, how fast people accept you and are able to. I'm a linguist, so I was looking at language identity, and the Gola community is a little bit unique, among the African Americans, or those who know a little bit about that. But I just wanted to share, to give a few tips, how to accelerate the process if it's possible. I know having a guide or somebody to take you in helps, but then getting the community to accept you, to trust you, to be able to share, their culture with you. Thank you.
Well, I think one of the things that was very important for me was going and coming. Even if you don't go away for a long time. I mean, I was working in Edo North. If I would go back to UI occasionally, where the Institute of African Studies was one of my hosts, and to go to the bookstore usually to buy books, because it was a wonderful bookstore in those days. And when I came back, people were more comfortable with me. So I realized that going and coming was a very important aspect. Working to learn language. In Ukpala, we don't say abokian, we say mawe, which is welcome. And I always worked with an assistant, though, in part because it lent me prestige, and I was young, so I needed, I needed all the help I could get in that sense, because I was a young woman, so I was a bit of an anomaly to being a young person but controlling resources. I had a car. I had a little Volkswagen Beetle that I imported into the country in the early 70s, because you couldn't buy a car here then. It was just after the Civil War. And I had camera equipment. I had my portable typewriter. It was a very different world than it is today with our computers and our scanners and our digital cameras. But so working with language, I found generally I had to make at least 3 visits to a community. When I initially did a survey of 50 villages over 10 ethnic groups in Etsako. There was only one Etsako in those days. And I would go into the village and find the chief or the council of elders, whoever was available, and I would explain what I was doing. I was also under the auspices of the Antiquities Service, as it was called then. And people would say, oh, it's too bad you didn't let us know you were coming. We would have prepared something for you. And of course you couldn't let anybody know you were coming unless you went there. And so I learned very quickly to say, well, I just came today to introduce myself and make an appointment to come back. And so I would go back. And in those days, there was incredible, Nigerians have always been very generous to me. But the elders were incredibly generous. They organized displays, which meant somebody had to pay the musicians. Somebody had to get the dancers together. Somebody had to pay for the animals that were used for sacrifice, because these masquerades were being brought out of season for me to photograph. Because I was a woman, they wouldn't let me go around the corner, and just, like my male colleagues did, and look at things. They had to do, it took me a long time, it was very frustrating, but it took me a long time to realize that this was an enormous advantage, because I got to see the whole show. I got to see what I should be seeing when I was looking at the traditional forms, not just the mask, which is a fragment of the whole form of the character, who is, maybe given a face by a mask, but who is there. And then I would photograph things, and I would come back and with photographs, which I gave. I did my own printing in black and white here, because I didn't see any of my color work for 3 years. I was here for 3 years. I saw none of my slides. I only saw my black and white, because I couldn't get the color done, except by sending it out, and I was afraid it would get lost coming back. So I would give the photograph, I would ask questions, and I would give people the photographs. And in some cases, elders, and sometimes I made an album if it was a big enough array of photographs, and leave it with them. And they would sometimes give me 5 naira. 5 naira was something in those days. For my fuel, for my petrol. Because they said, we appreciate the work that you're doing. Because they knew, as you all know, that education is very important, and if they had to make a choice between supporting a traditional institution and paying a child's school fees, they had to pay the child's school fees. And nobody was doing research on this and writing this material down. For 40 years, nobody has done research in Edo North, almost. And this is something I never predicted. I assumed I would have lots of people because kind of following and doing, and I have comparative studies that I could work with and so on. Almost nobody. I'm not talking about Americans, I'm talking about Nigerians has done research in this area. And it's visually a very rich area, and it's still vibrant. And I think it's actually becoming vibrant again. I think it's becoming more of an interest in revival, with the idea that some of this may be important for development of tourism and for economic development in some of these rural areas. I don't know. I think I've overused my time. I can talk until tomorrow, so this is a good thing to get me to close. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Within the fulbright context, I think we can now say you will be an ambassador plenipotentiary for Nigeria when you get back to the States. I'm not finished yet, man. You know that the question of images, perceptions, stereotypes, and all is part of what Fulbright is trying to really correct. And you've been privileged to have been here over time. You showed the slides of what it used to look like when you came the first time, and then the one you saw now in Benin about 2016. So the real key question is, how have you been managing to give this information out when you get back to the States?
Well, I never turn down an opportunity to talk, whether it's to a local library and pro bono. I mean, I'm not talking about paid lecturing, or to a Rotary Club, or to even a primary school group. I've talked to primary schools and high schools, and certainly through my teaching and conference papers and so on. We all share our material. I do have a rather disconcerting and discouraging report. One of my colleagues just put up on Facebook a request saying she was asked to speak in her daughter's 7th grade class, and the teacher warned, this is in the Midwest, American Midwest, and the teacher warned the class there might be bare-breasted women. So people should, and this was not pornographic in Africa, so that they should not be upset if they saw anything like this. So her request was, and I know she works in Mali, so I've no doubt she has plenty of pictures, but she basically said, I need some good pictures of, Nigerians, or Africans, and cities and whatever. I wrote back, go online. She doesn't know that already. And I actually suggest she go to www.adebakare.com, who is a Nigerian high fashion designer who has beautiful runway shots of his models wearing gorgeous clothing that could do that. But I also had, in Florida, when I first started teaching in the 70s, I I had a young woman come to me, a young African-American woman come to me after class. She didn't want to ask this question out loud in class, and she wanted to know if Africans wore clothes. And I said, my dear, I said, Africans are the most dressed up people that I have ever met. I said, that's, you know, but I was shocked that, you know, a college freshman, but in the 70s, there still wasn't much. I mean, African studies had really just started in the 60s, becoming part of the curriculum. So, and even though it's, you know, it's been over 50 years, there's still a great deal of ignorance in the United States about Africa. Probably more ignorance there than there is in, say, Nigeria about America. There are stereotypes about the streets being paved with gold. But I think people have, because of television, have a better understanding of what it looks like when you go to the U.S. anyway. One more?
Okay, thank you.
We have two.
Thank you. I thought.
Prof, please let Madam just. Okay, thank you. I have a question and a comment. My question first, and I just want to know, I've known you for many years, but with this presentation, I want to ask if your research in any way, first, are you a Christian? Number one question. Following that, did your research in any way affect your faith? And if it did, how?
Okay,
that's the first question. Let me finish the other part. The other part is that I will not hold brief for fine and applied arts. But knowing you from a Kenwa campus and being a member of this university community, I want to thank you very much. Your presentation sounded very much like a valedictory presentation. And I very much hope it is not. Because if I have the powers, and I hope everybody is listening to me, please bring Jane Bogatti back to Unibank. Thank you very much. And so, I want to thank you for all you have done for us, all the work you have been doing here. And fine art alone did not benefit from her works. Some of her donations also came to the music unit of the Theatre Arts Department. And I want to thank her very much for that. The program actually, hopefully by the grace of God, is going to commence by next semester, next session. And those are the first books we're going to use for the program. So you can see how very grateful we are. And I know that even if she lives here, she will not forget us. She will always keep the communication link open. And we expect you back as fast as possible. Thank you very much. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Actually, and since I was raised as a Catholic, so I guess that makes me a Christian. In how did it affect my faith? I'm not sure it affected my faith as a Catholic. I think having been raised as a Catholic, I was very comfortable with many of the traditional animist kind of activities because they are all part of Catholic services. So you have votive offerings. Yep, certainly part of Catholic practice. You have, in fact, one of my friends, whom I didn't expect to have any missionary friends. I considered them the enemy because I was working on the traditional side and they were trying to take my people away and convert them to other things. But one of the priests up in Edo North basically said, from Rome down, from Rome south, he said, it might as well be Africa in terms of Catholic practice. The church is built on the bones of the martyrs, reliquaries. Reliquaries are an important African form, or in animist religions, they're an important form historically within the Catholic Church. So there's a lot of there's a lot of overlap simply because the mystery religions of the East were incorporated into early Christianity when they were as they were proselytizing and trying to establish Christianity as, a broader based religion. And so they had to make accommodations. And so they said there's a lot of animist practice that's just embedded in much Christian practice. One of my students asked me, which do you think is better? Christianity, Islam, or traditional? And I said, I'm not even going to go there. I said, I think Nigerians, as an example of Africans, but Nigeria is where I am, take their religion very seriously, whether they are Muslim, whether they are Christian, whether they are traditional. And I think, that deserves respect. It doesn't matter. I don't think any of them, one is better than the other. They are all worthy of respect. So, I thank you for your kind words about being here in Benin, but it's a two-way street. People in Benin and in Nigeria have always been good to me.
If you identify any student and you see that student is very, very good, committed, and has shown dynamic leadership qualities, please send those students to us. We'll be able to encourage them to apply for this program and to really mentor them to be the leaders they ought to be. Now let's go to the next one. For the candidate description, we have not more than 25 years. Anybody applying shouldn't be more than 25 years. Very, very, very important. And they must have strong interest in social entrepreneurship, as I've said, and they must demonstrate strong leadership qualities and potential in their university and community activities, indicate a serious interest in learning about the US, and must have sustained high level of academic achievements. We need mature students with open mind, students that are tolerant. There will be other participants from all over the world, and we don't want people that will go and cause problem. Most of the time we conduct what is called a pre-departure briefing for anybody we are sending to the US. It is very, very, very key and very important. At times you have, in Nigeria, for instance, I want to raise this, LGBT issue in Nigeria. Okay? If somebody comes out and says, I'm a gay, what would be people's perception? I'm asking you, what would be people's perspective regarding the person? You say, you distance yourself, you have one or two things to say. Nigeria is a very religious set of people. We are very religious in Nigeria. But we are looking for people with open hearts. People that can take others for who they are. You can work with people without causing friction based on religion, based on culture, based on ethnicity, and so forth. So we are looking actually for people that are very flexible with open mind to participate on our programs. Now, I don't know if I should talk about this because do we have any teacher here, high school teacher? All right. Study of the U.S. Institute for Secondary Educators are for high school teachers. And what we I'm trying to achieve with this program is to introduce the study of the US into high schools. There's a lot to learn from America. Let's talk about our democracy, governance. For instance, our governance and democracy somehow is patterned after that of the US. And for other areas of national life. And so this program considers introducing the study of the US into high school curricula. So if you have teachers, high school teachers, that are keen about learning more about the United States and want to really start courses in high school, and I know a lot of private schools, for instance, they've introduced American studies into their curricula. I think I read about some schools in Lagos that introduce Chinese, studies, and so on and so forth. So you see, this particular program is very, very relevant. Very relevant. So if you have any secondary educator, no more than, let me see the age now. Yes, not more than 50 years of age, but with very high proficiency in English language, and of course, people with high interest in really learning about US education, US culture and values can apply for this program. And it's majorly for teachers. It is not for school administrators. There is a special one that was designed for school administrators some years ago. Okay, but of course, by the time we send out the call for application, if the Institute for School Administrator is available, we'll let you know. But majorly, it is for people that really do teaching, you understand, in school. All right. Yes, the Hubert Humphrey Fellowship Program. I want us to say it together. Let's say it again. Now, we've been able to talk about 3 programs under SUSI, the study of the US Institute. Can anybody recap? Let's recap. Can anybody tell me the 3 programs under this category? Yes? Scholars, leaders, and secondary educators. I don't really agree. Student leaders for scholars, for student leaders and secondary educators. Now, I want to give some minute to take some questions on this.